In Laos, a cafe shooting claims a civil rights movement leader's life. Witnesses say the suspect briefly enters the shop, firing 2 shots. More details on this later in the news. Good evening, I am Nina Richie Alago Flores. This is Mata ng Agila International. Now for the headlines. Philippines and United States to bolster security and maritime cooperation. Senators recommend privatization of NAIA terminals. U.S. President Joe Biden announces bilateral talks with Papua New Guinea. Russia saves Ukrainians during Sudan evacuation mission. And Serbian school shooting claims 9 lives. The suspect, a 14-year-old high schooler. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. on day 2 of his 4-day trip to the United States meets with U.S. President or Vice President Kamala Harris in Washington. The meeting covers the expansion of the security, economic, and people-to-people ties between the two countries. Arlene Ocampo tells us more.
Behind the trees and back of me is a residence of the U.S. Vice President. Today, Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and his wife Louise were hosted here by Vice President Kamala Harris and Second Gentleman Doug Emhoff for a brunch. Marcos and Harris discussed enhancing Philippine security and driving investment to its local communities. The two leaders also looked to strengthening the U.S. and Philippines economic partnership. Also discussed is their shared commitment to the rule of law and respect for human rights. Joining Marcos and Harris are Philippine government officials and representatives of the Filipino-American community, including business and civic leaders. Today is President Marcos' second day of his 4-day U.S. trip as the two nations commit to further strengthen their alliance. In Washington, Arlene Ocampo.
The White House says the United States will provide additional assets to the Armed Forces of the Philippines, or AFP, in support of the latter's modernization efforts. Washington says they will transfer 2 Island-class patrol vessels, 2 Protectorate-class patrol vessels, and 3 C-130H aircraft. 2 Cyclone-class coastal patrol vessels are now en route to Manila. White House says these military assets will support AFP's modernization program by enhancing its maritime and tactical lift capabilities. The Philippine Coast Guard, or PCG, lauds the support received from various countries regarding the West Philippine Sea dispute. Samantha Intal has the details.
Some countries have again expressed support to the Philippines, including the United States, in relation to the aggressive maneuvers of the Chinese Coast Guard in the West Philippine Sea just recently and its continued actions in such territory of the country. Philippine Coast Guard spokesperson Commodore J. Tariela says the tension in the West Philippine Sea remains an ordinary issue in the country. However, it became a household issue when the circumstances were made known.
Let me first clarify. Ang sinasabi natin na tumataas sa tension sa West Philippine Sea, this is not something new, no? Ito ay nangyayari na sa mga nakaraang taon. Itong pangharas ng China Coast Guard sa mga Philippine Coast Guard vessels at sa ating mga Pilipino mangingisda. The only reason na nalalaman natin ito sa publiko, it's because of the intention of the national government to be transparent as to what is happening in the West Philippine Sea. So, it is also the reason kung bakit nalalaman ito ng international community dahil pinapublicize natin.
Tariela clarifies, it is wrong to say that the tension in the West Philippine Sea is increasing. He adds, the experiences faced by the Philippine Coast Guard were not new before they conducted patrol in the area. The PCG and the Department of Foreign Affairs expressed their gratitude for the support of various countries in guarding the security of the country's territory. The PCG is also aware that the continued radio challenges by China in the West Philippine Sea cause fear and threat to the Philippines' activities in the territory.
Besides from dangerous maneuvers that they carry out to the Philippine Coast Guard vessels, are also their persistent radio challenges sa Coast Guard vessels. At tinatawagan nila ang Philippine Coast Guard at sinasabing tayo ang nag-intrude sa waters nila. At they are directing us to depart, to leave immediately sa mga maritime pictures na pinagpapatulyahan natin.
Samantha Intal for Mata na Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
According to the Presidential Communications Office, or PCO, a seafaring industry executive revealed this in a meeting with President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. in Washington. About 75 Filipino seafarers will be employed by U.S. firms in the next 3 to 4 years. President and CEO of Carnival Corporation, John Padgett, says the group of companies he holds is set to acquire Filipino seafarers. Padgett, representing Carnival Cruise Line, Holland American Airlines, and Seabourn, praised Filipino workers for their hospitality and competitiveness in the global workforce. President Marcos Jr. thanked U.S. employers for their continued trust in Filipino professionals and skilled workers. Data shows that the Philippines has been the top source of seafarers globally, with around 380,000 Filipino seafarers. A lawmaker has asked President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to issue an ultimatum to the management of Ninoy Aquino International Airport, or NAIA, to fix the country's gateway. Mayan Corvera has the details.
Senate President Juan Miguel Zubiri asked President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to issue an ultimatum to the management of the Ninoy Aquino International Airport. Zubiri's statement comes after a 6-hour power outage hit the NAIA Terminal 3 on Monday. He also urged NAIA officials to fix the problems or let foreigners manage the airport. Zubiri says the government can enter into a contract with foreign firms to manage the airport.
Mediocre is not an option for the Philippines. We have to run them efficiently and effectively. And that is what we're appealing to all public servants in our country. Hindi pwedeng mediocre service. Kailangan ang ating mga kababayan, they deserve better than that. They deserve better.
He says foreign investors can manage NAIA Terminals 1, 2, and 3 since the Public Services Law allows it.
We approve the law. They can be run already by internationally known corporations. It can be run. It can be efficiently managed by these companies. So that is an option. Kung hindi kaya ng ating mga kababayan, ating mga genius na nandun na yun, baka pwede siguro gawin na, bigyan na lang natin sa iba.
Zubiri says NAIA can be managed by the group that handles Singapore's Changi Airport. An airline review hailed Changi Airport as the best airport for 2023. Senator Christopher Bongo echoes Zubiri's proposal to transfer NAIA's management to private companies.
Okay lang po kung sakali namang makapagbibigay sila ng maayos na serbisyo. Kung mas improve po yung mga services, bakit hindi? Halimbawa, Cebu, halimbawa sa iba pang mga airport, konting dagdag sa bayad, pero yung serbisyo naman po, 100%. Bakit hindi? Importante po, ibalik natin yung maayos na serbisyo sa mga kababayan natin.
The Senate says they are ready to increase funds to avoid blackouts or power interruptions in NAIA.
But we in the Senate are ready to fund. So, nag-usap na kami ni Senator Sani Angara together with Ma'am Grace po, at handa na po kami mag-funding, magdagdag funding sa DOTR para sana, sana matigil na po itong mga power interruptions, itong mga failure of mechanisms and systems once and for all. Dahil nakakahiya.
Mayan Corvera for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The Office of the Ombudsman has ordered a preventive suspension against Manila International Airport Authority or MIA Acting General Manager Cesar Chiong and Acting Assistant General Manager Irene Montalvo. Vin Pascua reports.
The Office of the Ombudsman has suspended Manila International Airport Authority Acting General Manager Cesar Chiong and Acting Assistant General Manager Irene Montalvo. The preventive suspension of up to 6 months stemmed from Chiong's reassignment of 285 employees. The Ombudsman said Chiong designated Montalvo as Assistant General Manager despite a supposed unsatisfactory rating in 2020. Anonymous MIAA officials charged both Chiong and Montalvo with grave abuse of authority and grave misconduct. Chiong argued he had to reassign employees to improve airport operations. He said he is confident he'll be vindicated and cleared of the charges in the end. Senior Assistant General Manager Brian Ko will serve as the MIAA officer in charge while Chiong is on preventive suspension. Vin Pascua for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The five-man advisory panel has recommended filing administrative charges against 4 senior police officials. Eren Santos reports.
Former PNP Chief General Rodolfo Azurin confirms the panel's decision to dismiss 4 ranking police officials from service. Azurin says the 2 generals and 2 colonels were suspected to be involved in the illegal drug trade. The 4 were among the 36 senior police officials earlier suspected to be involved in narcotics syndicates. He says the 5-man advisory group also recommended filing administrative charges against the officials. Azurin also refused to name the police officials. He says he prefers to leave the decision to NAPOLCOM and DILG on whether to identify the 4 ranking officials. But he assures the public that all those who are involved will be properly charged. Azurin also hopes that General Benjamin Acorda will continue to push their recommendations.
I'm giving the assurance that all those personnel who are involved in this fiasco will be properly charged, appropriately charged, and administratively and criminally at pipilitin natin na sila po ay matatanggal sa serbisyo.
Meanwhile, DILG Secretary Benjamin Abalos says they will hold a press conference to announce the results of the 5-man advisory group.
We're going to make a statement about this. Okay? Just give us about probably 2 days so that all legalities ma-cover namin dito. We just want that when we make a statement, talagang airtight ang lahat nito.
Abalos previously appealed to senior PNP officials to submit their courtesy resignations as part of the government's efforts to rid the police force of officers with links to drug syndicates. Eden Santos for Mata ng Agila International. Trusted, connected, on point.
The Department of Health or DOH expects 390,000 doses of COVID-19 bivalent vaccines to arrive in the country by the end of the month. JD Mahinay tells us more.
DOH officer in charge Maria Rosario Vergere discloses that the country will donate almost 400,000 doses of bivalent vaccines before the month ends. She adds that the agency is just finalizing the essential document while it had secured an emergency use authorization or EUA for the vaccine. The Food and Drug Administration granted the EUA for the bivalent vaccines manufactured by Pfizer and Moderna last December. According to Vergere, the bivalent vaccines made by the 2 companies can be used for the original strain of the coronavirus, as well as Omicron and its sub-variants. The DOH is still waiting for legal clearance to receive the 1 million doses of bivalent vaccines donated by COVAX. DOH data shows that 78.4 million Filipinos were fully vaccinated against COVID as of March 20, 2023, while 23.8 million received the first booster shot and 4.4 million received the second dose. JD Mahinay for Mata ng Agila International. trusted, connected, on point.
Pharmaceutical and biotech company Moderna will set up a vaccine-making facility in the Philippines, which will serve the entire Asia-Pacific region. Moderna Chief Commercial Officer Arpa Garay and Senior Vice President and General Manager Patrick Bergstedt made the announcement during a meeting with President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. and other Philippine officials at the Blair House in Washington, D.C. According to the Presidential Communications Officer, PCO, officials of Moderna told the President that they are set to build a shared service facility for the pharmacovigilance. The World Health Organization defines pharmacovigilance as the science and activities relating to the detection, assessment, understanding, and prevention of adverse effects or any other vaccine-related problems. All medicines and vaccines undergo rigorous testing for safety and efficacy through clinical trials before they are authorized for use. The project will be the first investment by Moderna in the Philippines and its first in Asia. It is expected to employ about 50 staff composed of health professionals with their shortlisted office location either in Makati or at the Bonifacio Global City in Taguig. Coming up, the Pentagon sends Ukraine a $300 million care package. United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres addresses World Press Freedom Day. And China's COVID-19 whistleblower is back in Wuhan. Stay tuned for more stories around the globe when Mata ng Agila International returns.
Mga ka-PSL, ako diay si Gab Dagangon ng Davao Occidental Tigers. Para sa mainit action, sa hardcourt, tutok lang sa Pilipinas Super League. Ito ang liga ko.
Let's get together. Sunday 25.
This portion is brought to you by Final Match Security and Investigation Agency.
Welcome back to Mata ng Agila International. Japan's defense ministry said they scrambled a jet fighter after spotting a suspected Chinese drone between Yonaguni Island and Taiwan. The drone flew towards Bashi Channel, which separates Taiwan from the Philippines. Last February, the two countries held their first formal talks. China said they were concerned by Japan's military buildup. Tokyo took aim at Beijing's military ties with Russia. Japan also expressed worry that China will resort to force to take control of Taiwan. Taiwanese President Tsai Ing-wen says Taipei is willing to deepen cooperation with the United States. Tsai believes China's actions destabilize regional peace with its aggressive military exercises. Last Friday, Taipei's defense ministry said Beijing had flown 38 jets and warplanes near their island. Tsai says siding with U.S. and other like-minded countries will safeguard peace amid the increasing threats from China. U.S. President Joe Biden is set to visit Papua New Guinea this May. Prime Minister James Marape announces Eko Ortelesa Quinola has a report.
In May this year, U.S. President Joe Biden will have a bilateral meeting with Papua New Guinea Prime Minister James Marape, as well as the 18 Pacific Island leaders from the Pacific Island Forum. This May marks the visit of India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi as well to Papua New Guinea. Marape says the country is looking forward to witnessing the visit of the leaders of these two global superpowers.
Eko Hartaleza Quinola, Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The U.S. military is tracking a mysterious balloon that flew over American soil. Although it's not clear what it is or whom it belongs to, the object flew across portions of Hawaii but did not go over any sensitive areas. The U.S. military has been tracking it since last week and has determined that it is neither a threat to aerial traffic nor national security, and it has not transmitted any communicating signals. The object, which does not appear to have maneuverability, is moving slowly towards Mexico. U.S. officials do not believe the balloon belongs to the Chinese, but they are still working to identify its owner. A Chinese spy balloon flew across parts of the U.S. in early February before being shot down off the Carolina coast. The device was able to gather intelligence from several sensitive American military sites, despite the Biden administration's efforts to block it from doing so. The United States will send about $300 million in additional military aid to support Ukraine's nearing counteroffensive against Russia. The donations include artillery rounds, Hydra 70 unguided aircraft rockets, high-mobility artillery rocket systems, or HIMARS, and ammunition. According to Ukrainian Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov, they are stockpiling ammunition for the spring skirmish against Russia. The donation is 37th care package or the 37th care package from the Pentagon since February of 2022, amounting to roughly $36 billion worth of military aid. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky admits the United States did not warn him about Pentagon's secret documents. He describes the situation as unprofitable and a bad story. Meanwhile, Pentagon Press Secretary Pat Ryder did not confirm or deny Zelensky's claim. But he says Washington remains committed to working with Zelensky and their allies. He also vows Kyiv will have the security assistance to defend their country. Russian special forces say they rescued over 200 citizens, including some Ukrainians, in war-torn Sudan. The evacuees arrived at Moscow's Chalovsky airport. Kremlin says their mission was successful and they avoided problems during the rescue. Authorities are now coordinating with local partners to give aid or send the evacuees to their respective countries. During an emergency meeting on the Sudan crisis, African Union Commission Chair Musa Faki Mahamat says there is no viable military solution for this kind of crisis. UN Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, Hannah Serwa-Tete, and Intergovernmental Authority on Development, or IGAD Special Envoy Ismail Wais also spoke during the meeting. Wais says the two generals, despite accepting the ceasefire, continue fighting and shelling the city. Tete says the situation in Sudan remains a much of deep concern as the parties continue their fight. She says civilians bear the brunt of the conflict. Critical infrastructure, hospital ruins, schools, and airports have been destroyed. Tete says the war in Sudan has aggravated the already dire humanitarian situation, and shortages of food, water, medicines, and other basic goods are becoming extremely acute. In Doha, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says they will never be silent in the face of unprecedented systemic attacks on women and girls' rights. This on the second day of talks with world powers on Afghanistan, focusing on women's rights under the Taliban administration. Guterres says participants agreed on a need for a strategy of engagement. This would allow for the stabilization of Afghanistan and for addressing important concerns. He says the participants are worried about the stability of Afghanistan and have expressed those serious concerns. May 3 is World Press Freedom Day. In the U.S., UNESCO hosts the 30th anniversary of the International Day at the United Nations New York office. In a pre-recorded video message, UN Chief Antonio Guterres calls to stop the threats and attacks that target truth and truth tellers. Guterres says stop detaining and imprisoning journalists for doing their jobs. He also calls to stop the lies and disinformation.
Journalists, and this day highlights a basic truth. All our freedom depends on press freedom. Freedom of the press is the foundation of democracy and justice. It gives all of us the facts we need to shape opinions and speak truth to power. And as this year's theme reminds us, press freedom represents the very lifeblood of human rights.
A conservative U.S. think tank has filed a lawsuit and demanded access to Prince Harry's visa records. The Heritage Foundation wants to see if Harry admitted to illegal drug use on his visa application. The suit comes after the Duke of Sussex revealed in his memoir that he had used drugs when he moved to California in 2020. U.S. visa application policy provides admission of drug use as a ground for inadmissibility to enter the country. In theory, if Prince Harry failed to disclose prior drug use, he could be barred from applying for citizenship or deported. Fang Bin, who documented the initial COVID outbreak in the Chinese city of Wuhan, has been freed from jail after 3 years. Mr. Fang is one of several so-called citizen journalists who disappeared after sharing videos of scenes in Wuhan, the epicenter of the pandemic. After disappearing in February 2020, he was sentenced to 3 years in jail at a secret trial in Wuhan. Although activists have welcomed his release, they are concerned about the fate of another whistleblower. Zhang Zhan, a 39-year-old former lawyer, was detained in May 2020 and was sentenced to 4 years in prison for obstruction. This just in, Kremlin claims Kyiv sent at least 2 drones to attack President Vladimir Putin's residence. Russia says the attacks were to assassinate Putin. Viral video shows that drones exploded behind Kremlin walls. Putin's office said there were no victims or material damage. Sources say Putin is also safe. Up next, Pentagon announces troops to be deployed at the Mexican border. Hospitals in Afghanistan are in dire need of medical equipment. And Indonesian woman falls down an elevator shaft. Please do not go away. Mata ng Agila International will be back after a few moments.
This portion.
Mga ka-netizens, ako po si Tito Soto sa programang Reality Check. For more live and updates, please don't forget to like and subscribe to Net25 TV.
Let's get together. So Net25.
Ano ba itong Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership? Ano ang may dudulot ng trade agreement na ito sa bansa? Makakasama ko si Department of Trade Industry Secretary Alfred Pascual. Lahat ng yan sa Counterpoint, Miyerkules alas 10:30 ng gabi dito sa Net 25.
The annual Oral Cancer Awareness Walk and Run is back in the D.C., Virginia, and Maryland area. Survivors, families, friends, and those who lost their loved ones to the disease come together for a day of fitness and oral cancer awareness. Rose Papang tells us more.
The American Cancer Society says in this year, there is an estimated 54,000 new cases of oral cancer in the U.S. alone. Almost half of that number will not survive longer than 5 years, while many of those who do will suffer long-term complications. Today, we witnessed the community coming together in support of oral cancer patients and survivors, their family and friends. Now, on its 9th year, this Walk Run Awareness event, held not only here in the DMV region, but in several states across the U.S., was started in 2014 by a family whose son died of oral cancer.
Obviously, Peter's death left a hole in our lives that will never be filled, but he wanted to do something to help people learn about oral cancer because we didn't really know much about oral cancer. And so while he was still ill, he started the plans for this, to plan a 5K to educate people about the science of oral cancer.
I mean, you'd never get over the loss, but it's wonderful to have something that he wanted to start, keep continuing and actually growing on every year too, with regard to the dental community that we're so thankful for here in the DC area and all his friends that keep coming out.
The Oral Cancer Foundation, together with Bethesda Chevy Chase Oral Surgery Clinic, encourage all of us to include in our priorities caring for our oral health.
Sometimes they have lumps and bumps. They don't even realize in their mouth that they have possible pre-cancer lesions or cancer lesions. Young, old, it doesn't have any predisposition. Sometimes, we have people who smoke, chewing tobacco, even alcohol is also one of the precancerous cursor for oral cancer. And we want to make sure that people are aware. They know that.
We want to raise awareness specifically for this type of oral cancer because the fastest growing demographic are actually non-smokers. So we all know that oral cancers are very commonly caused by tobacco use and alcohol. But that we're finding now that there's a growing population, more so than any other cancer, that are non-smokers. And so we're trying to raise awareness, get the community to be involved, and so we can help mitigate that and then keep that trend from growing anymore.
For more information about oral cancer, visit oralcancer.org. In Silver Spring, Maryland, Rose Papa Angeles for Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
The White House says President Joe Biden will not negotiate with Republicans on their push to make spending cuts a precondition for extending the U.S. debt ceiling, also in avoiding a disastrous default. Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says this is not an issue that they will negotiate on. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says without a debt ceiling extension, the federal government could run out of money and default on debts as early as June the 1st. The Pentagon announces it will deploy more troops to help provide security at the U.S.-Mexico border. Officials fear a surge in migrant crossing attempts once COVID-19 immigration restrictions end on May 11. Hundreds of migrants line up at the border between Mexico and California, west of the San Isidro port for entry. About 1,500 troops will be sent to the border. This number adds to the 2,500 already there to support Border Patrol authorities facing a possible new gush of frontier crossings. Spokesman Brigadier General Pat Ryder says for 90 days, this 1,500 military personnel will fill critical capability gaps. This includes ground-based detection and monitoring, data entry, and warehouse support. San Jacinto County officials say they have arrested the suspect behind the Texas mass shooting. Authorities identified the man as Francisco Oropesa. Sheriff Greg Capers says Oropesa was caught hiding in a closet underneath some laundry. Initial reports show the suspect gunned down 5 people in an execution style. He is expected to be held on a $5 million bond. A mystery over the identities of 7 bodies found in a home in rural Oklahoma begins to unravel. Authorities call for a search for a convicted sex offender and 2 missing teenage girls. While the circumstances of the homicides remain unclear, authorities believe the missing girls were in a home belonging to Jesse McFadden. 39-year-old McFadden is a felon rapist. The bodies found in Henrietta have not yet been formally identified. Henrietta is a small town south of Tulsa, Oklahoma. But authorities believe that McFadden and the 2 girls, aged 14 and 16 respectively, are among the victims. A source says the 2 missing teens were friends with one of McFadden's stepdaughters and had gone to spend the night at their home. McFadden was convicted of rape in 2003. In a separate case, he is accused of possessing child pornography and attempting to solicit sex with a minor. He was scheduled to appear in court on Monday for those charges. McFadden never showed up. Outside the Buckingham Palace, police arrest a man after throwing suspected shotgun shells onto royal grounds. A remote explosion also occurred after the arrest. Authorities report that the man was in possession of a knife and a suspicious bag. Police say the man was immediately detained and taken into custody. There were no reported casualties, however. Investigators treat it as an isolated mental incident. The overnight rehearsals for the coronation went ahead despite the incident. In 3 days, King Charles' coronation, which is set to be attended by world leaders and monarchs around the globe. Organizers say Saturday's royal coronation will feature a swear of allegiance to King Charles. Instead of the traditional homage of peers, the ceremony will include a homage of people. The royal announcement says all people in the United Kingdom and other places where King Charles is the head of state will swear allegiance to the monarchy. Some anti-monarchy groups have branded the Pledge of Allegiance to the king as offensive. They plan to protest on Saturday. Teachers at schools and colleges across England were out on picket lines earlier today. The National Education Union, or NEU, staged another day of strikes in their long-running dispute over pay. Union leaders accused ministers of refusing to engage in dialogues, chastising those actions as extremely irresponsible. The Education Department said they'd made a fair and reasonable pay offer to the teachers. The union had called for backdated pay for this year when most teachers were given a 5% pay raise as well as inflation matching pay increase for the next academic year. The NEU has already confirmed plans to continue the walkout well into the students' summer exams. 8 children have died after a 14-year-old boy allegedly opened fire in his elementary school in the Serbian capital, Belgrade. Police arrested a 14-year-old student at the Vladislav Ribnikar School in central Belgrade in connection with Wednesday morning's attack. The suspect brandished his father's gun and shot his teacher first. He then proceeded to open fire at random students and the school's security guard. An investigation into the motive behind the incident is underway. Mass shootings are comparatively rare in Serbia, which has very strict gun laws, but gun ownership in the country is among the highest in Europe. The Western Balkans are riddled with thousands of illegal weapons following wars and unrest in the 1990s. In 2019, it was estimated that there are 39.1 firearms per 100 people in Serbia, the third highest in the world behind the U.S. and Montenegro. In Laos, a civil rights movement leader was gunned down at a cafe. Based on the footage, the gunman was wearing a brown shirt and black cap, entering briefly inside the shop. After the suspect confirmed its target, it re-enters the establishment and fired 2 shots at close range. Police identified the victim as Mr. Anosa Jack Luang Suphom. According to the police, they are still investigating the incident as well as searching for suspects. Two pastors based in coastal Kenya have appeared in court over the deaths of more than 100 of their congregants. Pastor Paul Mackenzie was released by one court in the town of Malindi before being rearrested and presented in an upper court in the town of Shanzu. More than 100 bodies have been exhumed from dozens of mass graves on his property within Kalifi County. Children are believed to be among the dead, but it is unclear how many, as some of the bodies are in poor condition. Pastor Ezekiel Odero, whose church is in the same county as Mackenzie's, has also appeared in court. He will remain in custody for a further 2 days as investigations continue. Odero was arrested last week in connection to the deaths of dozens of his congregants at his megachurch, which draws thousands of people from across the country. He is also being investigated for his links to Mackenzie. Certain hospitals in Afghanistan lament the absence of working ventilators and other basic medical equipment. Mothers hold oxygen tubes near their babies' noses because masks designed to fit their small faces are not available. According to the UN Children's Fund, or UNICEF, every day around 167 children die in Afghanistan from preventable diseases, illnesses that could and should be cured with the right medication and instruments. UNICEF reports that the oxygen production unit at their hospitals is not able to produce sufficient oxygen because it only has power at night and there isn't a steady supply of raw material. So many simply can't make it to the hospital, and others choose not to stay once they get there. In these poverty-stricken Middle Eastern countries, a disproportionate number of the new graves belong to children. There may be no way to accurately count how many casualties have occurred so far, but there is evidence everywhere of the scale of the crisis. In what comes as an unfortunate incident, a woman plummeted to her death at the Kuala Namu airport after forcing open the wrong set of doors of a lift and falling down the shaft. The incident was caught on CCTV cameras showing the last few minutes of the woman, identified as 38-year-old Aisia Sinta Dewi. In the video footage, Dewi calmly walks into the double-sided cabin and pushed the button for the second floor before looking at her phone. Unaware that the lift opened on the other side as well, without looking down, she stepped out and plunged down the gap into the lift shaft. The local law enforcement agencies have now opened an investigation into the matter. Coming right up, Jeffrey Hinton warns U.S. of the dangers of AI. Samsung bans ChatGPT over security leak fear. And Alyssa Valdez is the country's flag bearer in the 32nd SEA Games opening ceremony. Catch the latest in business, sports, and entertainment when Mata ng Agila International returns. Don't go away. AI pioneer Jeffrey Hinton quits Google Forum to warn U.S. of AI's imminent dangers. According to Hinton, he resigned from Google for him to freely discuss AI without considering this impact on the company. This was stated in his tweet on Monday. Hinton adds that his step back from the company comes as a growing number of lawmakers, advocacy groups, and tech insiders raised alarms for the apparent risk brought by the AI-powered chatbots. This is to spread misinformation and displace workers. Hinton notes that AI will boost healthcare while also creating opportunities for lethal autonomous weapons. Hinton was not the first Google employee to warn us about AI. In July, the company fired an engineer who claimed an unreleased AI system had become sentient, which violated employment and data security policies. Tesla Incorporated has raised prices in a range of up to $290 after the company slashed prices of its top-selling vehicles since the start of the year. The hike was the first on its two top-selling models at the same time in multiple markets. Shares rose by nearly 2% in early trading. Musk has said the company is willing to sacrifice margin for sales volume, but is also looking to roll prices back higher. Tesla has raised the starting price point by $250 on the base Model Y and Model 3 in the United States. Prices change about the same amount in its second largest market of China, as well as in Canada and Japan. In the U.S., it was the first time since January that Tesla has increased the price of its cheapest car, the Model 3. The long-range version of the Model Y remains about 24% cheaper in Tesla's largest market. Several analysts said the move reflected Tesla's dynamic pricing strategy and was unlikely to undo the significant price cuts that sent the company's gross margins to a two-year low in the first quarter.
Tesla here in Thailand ผมแปมปฏิพัฒน์
Samsung Electronics bans ChatGPT over security leak fears. The company's employees in its mobile and appliance division are restricted from using generative AI services like ChatGPT over instances of misuse of the technology. According to Samsung, this measure prepares a security-safe environment for employees, making the work efficient and convenient. Samsung internal survey shows more than 60% of the staff are prone to security risks with using generative AI platforms with company devices. A social networking startup is launching a new social app this month with no algorithm-driven content. The APRR-TRO, pronounced retro, plays on nostalgia for earlier days when social networks were simpler. The company says it's all about making real connections with friends and family without the interruption of ads from brands. But if you wish to check out your favorite brands, you can do so by switching to the app's brand space or its Reels-like space called Retro TV. But Facebook, its closest rival, is already an established virtual community complete with a marketplace, Reels, videos, dating, chats, groups, and pages. Plus, a user can still easily hide ads that they are not interested in. Retro's edge is that it has a feature where you can chat with AI, which kind of defeats the purpose of a user focusing on genuine human connection. Plus, if users wish for more personal connections with their friends and family, there's still email, in-person meetings, and the good old video phone call. Will Retro be able to sustain its simpler user experience? The bottom line is it still boils down to a matter of personal preference. In the 2023 NBA playoffs, the New York Knicks and Los Angeles Lakers wins, and Joel Embiid of the Philadelphia 76ers was named the league's most valuable player. Ben Pascua tells us more. Jalen Brunson scored 30 points and Julius Randle added 25 points and 12 rebounds to help the New York Knicks beat the Miami Heat 101-105 and to even the series at 1-1. Randle returned in Game 2 after missing the first game with an ankle injury, while Miami's Jimmy Butler did not play in Game 2 with a sprained right ankle. Los Angeles Lakers' Anthony Davis and LeBron James delivered Game 1 win over the Golden State Warriors 117-112. The Lakers held off the Warriors' late rally to win an entertaining Game 1 after being led by as many as 14 points in the fourth quarter. Davis scored 30 points and 23 rebounds, while James added 22 points and 11 rebounds. Meanwhile, the NBA announced the Philadelphia 76ers' Joel Embiid as the league's most valuable player. It is the first time the Cameroon native earned the awards while being given the name or the nickname The Process. He averaged 33.1 points, 10.2 rebounds, and 4.2 assists per game. Embiid is the first 76er to win the league MVP since Allen Iverson in 2001. Volleyball superstar Alyssa Valdez will be the Philippines flag bearer during the parade of athletes at the 32nd Southeast Asian Games opening ceremony on May the 5th. Valdez will lead the all-women athlete opening rights delegation at the Morodok Teko Stadium in Phnom Penh, Cambodia. The choice of Valdez is a departure from the Philippine Olympic Committee's statement that 3 men will join the Filipino athletes whose identity would be revealed a few days before the opening. This is the second time that Valdez has been named the country's flag bearer for the biennial sporting event since 2015 in Singapore. The 2023 Southeast Asian Games will take place in Cambodia on May 5 until May 17. TV and movie writers went on strike for the first time in 15 years after negotiations with film studios failed to reach a new contract. After 6 weeks of negotiation with the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers, the Writers Guild of America announced that its membership would walk off the job. A hiatus is possible in production for everything from favorite late-night shows to hit streaming series, which represents approximately 11,500 people. The writers, of whom cannot support themselves with writing alone, are suffering from reduced job opportunities and the loss of some sources of income due to an industry shift from traditional broadcast and cable programming to streaming services. The Writers Guild wants total pay increases for members amounting to about $429 million per year, while the AMPTP's counter would run $86 million per year. The AMPTP, which is negotiating on behalf of studio management, responded by saying it was willing to improve on its offer, but was not willing to meet some of the union's demands. The last time the film and TV writers was on a strike is in 2007 to 2008, which lasted for 100 days. We're already halfway through the week, and to help you get through what remains, here's a quote from Dr. Maya Angelou, a civil rights and feminist leader and a renowned memoirist. Love recognizes no barriers. It jumps hurdles, leaps fences, penetrates walls to arrive at its destination full of hope. So love, 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 love. And that's a wrap for tonight's news. Catch the latest updates on our social media channels. I am Nina Richie Lago Flores. Do stay tuned for tonight's episode of Counterpoints with attorney Salvador Panelo and attorney Anthony Mark Emo Kling. This is Mata ng Agila International, Trusted Connected, on Point.